Bible passages come from 2 Timothy. First reading begins at verse 3 of chapter 1. Timothy, I thank God for you, the God I serve with a clear conscience, just as my ancestors did. Night and day I constantly remember you in my prayers. I long to see you again, for I remember your tears as we parted, and I am filled with joy when we are together again. May the Lord show special kindness to Onesiphorus and all his family, because he often visited and encouraged me. He was never ashamed of me because I was in chains. When he came to Rome, he searched everywhere until he found me. May the Lord show him special kindness on the day of Christ's return. And you know well how helpful he was in Ephesus. Timothy, please come as soon as you can. Demas has deserted me because he loves the things of this life and has gone to Thessalonica. Crescens has gone to Galatia, and Titus has gone to Dalmatia. Only Luke is with me. Bring Mark when you come, for he will be helpful to me in my ministry. I sent Tychicus to Ephesus. When you come, be sure to bring the coat I left at Carpus at Troas. Also bring my books, and especially my papers. Alexander the coppersmith did me much harm, but the Lord will judge him for what he has done. Be careful of him, for he fought against everything we said. The first time I was brought before the judge, no one came with me. Everyone abandoned me. May it not be counted against them. But the Lord stood with me and gave me strength, so that I might preach the good news in its entirety for all the Gentiles to hear. And he rescued me from certain death. Yes, the Lord will deliver me from every evil attack and will bring me safely into his heavenly kingdom. All glory to God forever and ever. The word of the Lord.
Thanks be to God.
Thanks, Brad. Well, I hope you guys are getting excited, because next Sunday we begin looking at the good news, with the hopes of eventually sharing it in the real world, passing it on to the next generation. But as I think about that, I think that sharing the good news might seem like a lonely, kind of scary proposition to many of us. And so the thought of actually doing it, not just talking about it here, but actually doing it, I think can seem a little daunting. And I think one reason for that feeling is that when we look at the Bible, we can often focus on the few big names: Paul, Peter, John. And so it seems like a very individualistic endeavor. But what I love about today's passages from 2 Timothy is that they show us that that is not how it was actually lived out by the early church, but that God designed it to be something much more beautiful and fun than that. You see, what we see here in 2 Timothy is that sharing the gospel was always a team thing. We, of course, see here Paul and Timothy as teammates. But I invite you now to take another look at chapter 4, starting at the 9th verse. And if you want, I would count up the names as we go. But listen to this. There we read, Timothy, please come as soon as you can. Demas has deserted me because he loves the things of this life and has gone to Thessalonica. But even with the desertion of Demas, we see others who are involved. Paul mentions Crescens, who has gone to Galatia. He mentions Titus, who has gone to Dalmatia. He says, only Luke is with me. But then he says, bring Mark with you when you come, for he will be helpful to me in my ministry. He says, I sent Tychicus to Ephesus. And then he finally says, when you come, be sure to bring the coat I left with Carpus at Troas. Also bring my books, especially my papers. And what I love so much about this, what's so beautiful about it, is what we see here very clearly is it was not exactly a lonely sharing of the good news. Rather, this is a wonderful, beautiful team where there was a clear sense of everyone working together for something they all believed in. We see here in verse 11 two very familiar names to us, Luke and Mark, who, I don't have to tell you, wrote the gospel accounts that bear their very names. But what I like about this passage is here we see who they were. That they weren't ivory tower isolated writers, but instead they were people who were part of Paul's gospel sharing team. They were all on the same team together. Now that doesn't mean that they were never alone in sharing the good news. But you see, what we see here is that it was very much a team experience for everyone, where everyone is working together for the sake of the gospel. And so that is what we are called to be as well in sharing this gospel that we're going to look at next week, is we're supposed to be this wonderful team. And so as you keep that in mind, what do we see in these passages that makes for a great team? Well, the first thing I invite you to take a look at is in chapter 1, starting with the 16th verse. And what I find interesting is here we see someone else. Another name, a man named Onesiphorus. And I thought Brad did a good job with that. I was thinking he would say Onesiphorus or something, but he didn't. And I think, what neat names these people had. I mean, don't you think? I mean, I feel kind of bad that I named my daughter Erin. I mean, it's just so pedestrian. I mean, I like to call her, hey, Onesiphorus. But regrets. But Paul writes here to Timothy, he says, may the Lord show special kindness to Onesiphorus and all his family, because he often visited and encouraged me. He was never ashamed of me. Because I was in chains. It says when he came to Rome, he searched everywhere until he found me. May the Lord show him a special kindness on the day of Christ's return. And you know very well how helpful he was in Ephesus. I mean, to me, what a great example Onesiphorus is of how beautiful it is having a team to be part of. I mean, how encouraging he is to Paul as Paul shares the gospel. And it bolstered Paul when he needed it the most, when he was in chains, when he was in prison. And this meant so much to Paul that he says here, may the Lord show him special kindness on the day of Christ's return. And so to me, what a wonderful team this is. We also see the same type of helping from Timothy in chapter 4, one of the things we just looked at, where Paul tells Timothy, when you come, be sure to bring the coat I left with Carpus at Troas. Also bring my books, especially my papers. And we might think, well, what a little thing. I mean, why even mention it? But I can imagine someone else who might have said, look, if you want those things, come get them yourself. I mean, who do you think you are? But what I love about the early church is not here, not on this team. And lastly, in chapter 1, we see the same kind of loving help, where Paul writes, night and day I constantly remember you in my prayers. I long to see you again. For I remember your tears as we parted, and I will be filled with joy when we are together again. And so what is so beautiful here is this wonderful sense of each person helping the others in this sharing. That the sharing of the good news wasn't just one person on their own, but rather a close-knit team that is willing to do anything that is needed so that the good news is shared with others. I mean, wow. You see, as we sit here this morning, we may not always realize how important our encouragement is to one another. But as is shown here in the record of the early church, it is priceless. And if, I'll tell you the truth, if we're to live out this vitally important mission of sharing the good news, I can guarantee you that we will all need encouragement at times. And I think it is so great to know that this right here is a team. That we will have help. That we're not on our own. And so our goal as listed in this passage is to help each other like the early church did. To be that team. You see, as we look at these passages, what I see here is a great God-given rhythm in the early church. And what I mean by that rhythm is this. They were constantly going out to share with people. Just like when you leave this space today, you have every opportunity to do that. They took that opportunity. But that wasn't the only part of the rhythm. That was the going out. But then they would regularly come back to one another. Or being in contact in some way. Being strengthened by one another. There is this constant, I'm going out, sharing, coming back to be with you, and we strengthen one another. And I think as we have this place here, how wonderful to know that we have a place that we can come back to each week. To talk with like-minded people about the mission. Where we can talk about our successes. We can talk about our failures. And share words of encouragement with each other. And if needed, comfort and advice. Where every Sunday after being out in that world, we don't just come together again. But you see, we come together as a team. You see, that's so much more fun. Well, one other important characteristic of the early church is seen in chapter 4, and so I invite you to take a look at that, starting with the 16th verse. The mood changes a little bit here. There Paul writes, the first time I was brought before the judge, no one came with me. Everyone abandoned me. May it not be counted against them. But the Lord stood with me and gave me strength so that I might preach the good news in its entirety for all the Gentiles to hear. See, what we see in this passage is they all messed up. Here Paul is brought before a judge. I'll tell you, having been a lawyer, it's not necessarily a good time. Rather, it's a stressful time, a scary time. And so scary here that it seems none of his teammates wanted to be seen as one who was on the same team as he was. And so on that day, no one showed up to support him. I mean, think of that. Paul talks about being abandoned. Now, I don't know about you, but I'm guessing that hurt. But you see, the Bible instructs us that that is inevitable. In this sin-infected world of ours. I want to let you know, if you don't already know, we will all disappoint one another. At some point. So you can count on it. To err is human. But you see, one thing we see here is Paul imitated Christ and made an allowance for his teammates' faults, anticipating that we all have faults. And so sooner or later, those faults will come out and become visible to us. But here Paul shows us a God-given level of mercy and forgiveness, saying, may it not be counted against them. I just want to tell you from my own life, I've been on a lot of sports teams. And I'll tell you, we mess up all the time. When I came here this morning, I wasn't going to share anything too personal, but I've changed my mind. We've got time. Now, this may sound arrogant at first, but believe me, as the story goes on, you'll see it wasn't meant to be arrogant. But when I was on a state championship undefeated football team, the very first game of the year, so no wins, no losses, no ties, beginning of the season, I made the winning tackle that won the game. And what was interesting about it is they ran to my side. They had faked that they were going this way, and our whole team was sucked that way. And so I was left alone with this quarterback sneak to my side, and I stopped him. And so I got my name in the paper and all sorts of accolades. I remember the coach slapping me on the butt, which I don't recommend, but, I got a lot of glory from it. But what the newspaper didn't tell you, that I'm going to tell you this morning, is that on every other play in that game, my opponent trashed me. I know why they ran that play to my side to win the game. I mean, literally. The reason I had grace that day is I'm 6'3", and the guy on the other end, defensive end, was 5'11". And so they kept running to him as if he's the weak link. And so he kept tackling them and doing a good job. And I'm like getting totally messed up on my side because the guy kept throwing a block I had never seen before. Usually, they hit you about chest high. I could deal with that. But he would clip me at the knees, and I didn't know how to defend it. And so he beat me every time. but they never ran to my side, so. But my guess is that very last play, he must have went to the quarterback. He says, I'm totally annihilating my opponent. Fake that you're going that way again. Do a quarterback sneak past him. I'll level him like I've been doing all game. And of course that didn't happen. I got all the glory. But you see, I had messed up the whole game. And so to me, what it taught me is the best teams, when all of our faults come out and we mess up, they don't turn on each other. And I didn't quit the team, and they didn't quit on me. You see, we knew that we would all mess up from time to time. And we realized that we were in it together. And in the end, we all wanted the same thing. And no one touched us from that time. And so to bring this home to you, knowing the lineup we have here, knowing the team I'm on, the team you're on, how wonderful it is to be on a team. That when we do mess up, we have teammates who will do what Christ did for us and what Paul did for his teammates in the early church. And that is forgive one another. You see, just as much as encouragement, that keeps a team strong. That ability to forgive. And so next week we begin learning the good news. And we're going to learn it not as individuals, not even as a group, but you see, as a team. Supporting one another in this whole endeavor from beginning to end. And so we have nothing to fear in sharing the good news, because I'll tell you, I guarantee you, we won't ever do it alone. Now, that's a strong statement. But you see, in fact, Paul understood so well that we have one teammate who will never disappoint us or forsake us. In fact, he will always be a source of strength to us and encouragement. And you know who that is. And so you see, it has always been a team thing. It started out with you and Jesus Christ. But you were never alone. You were always on a team. And now you see the rest of the lineup. And so I am so happy to be on this team. And from now on, if you aren't already doing it, see us as a team. Not just a group of people who disparately come in and happen to be in the same church, but a team. We're going to do this together. Okay? And so as a team, please stand.